The mansion stood like a monument to wealth and loneliness, its marble floors echoing only the faint shuffle of servants' shoes. Every chandelier sparkled, every curtain was pressed and perfect, but within those flawless walls something felt painfully hollow. In the farthest room, with tall arched windows and thick velvet drapes, sat Adrian, the millionaire's only son. He was 10, small for his age, with pale skin and wide gray eyes that carried a constant sadness too deep for a child to bear. He pressed his forehead against the cool glass, watching the world outside that seemed alive in ways he could never truly touch. Outside, birds darted through the garden, their wings fluttering like whispers of joy. Children's laughter floated from beyond the gates, muffled, invisible waves of sound that never reached him. Adrian couldn't hear their joy, couldn't feel their voices. He saw their smiles and open mouths, their games and songs, but to him, it was all part of an unreachable dream. His world was endless silence, heavy and still. Sometimes he would place his hands over his chest, trying to feel something. Maybe the faint rhythm of his heartbeat, the only sound he could ever truly know. But even that, too, felt lonely. Victor, his father, was a man used to solving problems with money. If something broke, he replaced it. If someone left, he hired another. But when Adrian began to cry without reason, silent sobs, his body shaking, tears streaming down his cheeks, Victor realized there was nothing he could buy to fix this. He hired doctors, psychologists, even speech specialists from across the world. They all said the same thing: the boy was healthy. Physically, nothing was wrong, but no one could answer why he wept so much. Sometimes Victor would watch from the doorway, his heart twisting with guilt. He wanted to approach, to comfort his son, but he didn't know how. Whenever he tried to speak, Adrian would look away, as if words were foreign weapons instead of bridges. And so the distance between them grew, invisible but unbreakable. At night, Adrian would sit in bed, clutching a small wooden toy that his mother had once given him before she passed away. It was the only thing that seemed to calm him. He would trace the carved lines of the toy's wings, an angel's wings, and imagine her voice, though he had never truly heard it. Sometimes he dreamed of her singing, not with sound but with light, colors, and warmth. And when he woke up, the silence returned, crueler than ever. Each morning, the servants would find the boy in the same spot by the window, eyes red from tears, watching the garden where life bloomed and laughed without him. The mansion, though filled with every luxury imaginable, had become a cage of quiet sorrow. Adrian's tears were the only soundless echo of a child lost in a world that spoke a language he could never hear. And though no one dared to say it, they all felt the same fear. The boy was fading, not in body but in spirit. Something deep inside him was calling out, desperately, to be understood, but no one could hear the cry. It was a gray morning when Lily first arrived at the mansion, clutching her mother's hand as they stepped through the towering gates. Her mother had just been hired as a maid, a humble job in the home of one of the richest men in the city. Lily, small and full of life, was curious about everything. Her eyes darted from the marble fountains to the rose bushes and the gold-framed windows that shimmered in the light. She had never seen a house so big. But what caught her attention most wasn't the luxury. It was the boy sitting alone in the garden, completely still, his gaze fixed on the pond as if he were lost somewhere far away. Adrian didn't notice her at first. He was tracing circles on the pond surface with a small stick, watching the ripples fade into nothing. His face was pale, his lips pressed tight, and his eyes were distant, unfocused. Lily tilted her head, wondering why he looked so sad. She approached softly, her shoes crunching the gravel beneath her feet. "Hi," she said brightly. He didn't look up. "I'm Lily, what's your name?" Still no answer. She frowned, thinking he was ignoring her, and stepped closer. Only when her shadow crossed his face did he glance up, startled, his gray eyes wide with confusion and fear. She smiled, but he didn't. He only watched her hands as she waved. Then she realized he wasn't ignoring her. He couldn't hear her. Something in her chest tightened as understanding began to dawn. She had met children like him before, quiet and withdrawn, lost in a world without sound, but none had eyes so heavy with sadness. Lily didn't run away. Instead, she sat down beside him on the grass. The silence between them was strange at first, but somehow not uncomfortable. She began to draw pictures in the dirt, a sun, a flower, a small stick figure of herself waving. Then she pointed to him, smiled, and drew another figure with messy hair and a tear on its face. Adrian stared at it for a long moment, then gently wiped the tear away with his finger. That became their first conversation. Every day after that, Lily found her way back to him. She brought small treasures from her world, a paper boat she folded herself, a shiny marble that glinted in the sunlight, a bell she'd found in her mother's cleaning supplies. She would shake it softly, and though he couldn't hear the sound, Adrian's eyes would follow the movement, mesmerized by the flicker of light as the bell swayed. Slowly, his expression began to change. His tears became less frequent. He even began to respond to her gestures, nodding, pointing, sometimes smiling shyly before looking away. Lily noticed something else too. When she hummed, even softly, he would close his eyes and lift his head slightly as if he could feel the sound. The vibration seemed to reach him in ways words couldn't. So she made it a game, placing his hand against a wooden table as she tapped a rhythm, or letting him feel the soft buzz of her voice through her chest. Every time she did, his eyes widened, full of wonder. For the first time, Adrian wasn't crying because of what he couldn't hear. He was feeling something he never had before. One afternoon, as sunlight spilled over the garden, she placed his small hand on her chest again, right over her heart. "Do you feel that?" she mouthed slowly, exaggerating the words. He stared at her lips, then nodded. His fingers trembled slightly as he touched the rhythm beneath her skin, the pulse of life itself. And when he looked up at her again, something had changed. The loneliness that once filled his eyes was softer now, replaced by a fragile spark of warmth, like the first light after a storm. Lily didn't understand it fully, but she knew she had done something important. For the first time since she arrived, she saw the boy smile. Not a polite or forced smile, but a true one. It was small, almost invisible, but it was enough. The garden, which had once been a place of silence and sorrow, now held something new, something alive. And though no one else noticed, Lily felt it deep inside her. The world around Adrian had just begun to breathe again. The next morning, Lily woke up before sunrise. She had an idea, something simple, something only a child's heart could think of. She gathered the small treasures she had shared with Adrian, the bell, the paper boat, the marble. Carefully, she placed them in a small wooden box her mother used to keep sewing needles in. She tied it shut with a red ribbon and ran out into the garden, the grass still damp with dew. Adrian was already there, sitting by the pond as always, his hands resting quietly in his lap. But when he saw her running toward him, hair wild, eyes shining, something in him stirred. She sat down beside him, breathing fast from excitement, and opened the box. One by one, she took out the objects, laying them in front of him like pieces of a secret code. Then she did something different. She touched the bell and didn't shake it. Instead, she placed it on the wooden bridge above the pond and hit the railing gently with her fist. Adrian's eyes widened as the vibration traveled through the wood into his palms. His lips parted. She hit it again, stronger this time, and motioned for him to place his hand on the surface. He did, and the vibration pulsed beneath his skin like invisible waves. His face lit up. He could feel it. Lily smiled, her eyes glistening, and then pressed his hand against her chest again. She mouthed slowly, "This is what sound feels like." He looked at her, confusion softening into awe. His fingers lingered over her heart, feeling the steady rhythm. For the first time, he wasn't reaching for what he couldn't have. He was experiencing it in his own way. And that understanding filled him with something he had never known before: peace. From the window of the mansion, Victor stood frozen, watching the two children. He had come searching for Adrian after noticing the boy hadn't been crying all morning. What he saw made his chest tighten. The little maid's daughter, barefoot and carefree, was laughing without sound, her gestures bright and wild, while his son watched her every move with open wonder. Victor had never seen his boy look like that. It wasn't the look of sadness or isolation, it was connection. He walked out quietly, unsure if he should interrupt. When he approached, Lily noticed him and smiled, waving for him to come closer. She pointed to Adrian's hand and then to her heart, motioning for Victor to do the same. Hesitant, the man knelt beside his son, placing his large hand over Adrian's small chest. Then, unsure what to do, he took his son's hand and placed it over his own heart. The moment was still. Adrian's eyes met his father's, and for the first time in years, something invisible passed between them, a language that needed no words, no sound, only feeling. Tears filled Victor's eyes as he understood. His son hadn't been crying because of what he couldn't hear, but because of what he felt trapped inside: music, love, and emotion with no way to express them. The silence that surrounded him wasn't empty. It was overflowing, waiting for someone to understand its rhythm. Lily had found the key. Victor pulled Adrian into his arms, holding him close. Adrian stiffened at first, then slowly hugged him back. It was clumsy, uncertain, but it was real. The boy pressed his ear against his father's chest, feeling the deep thud of his heartbeat. He smiled, a real, unguarded smile that broke Victor's heart open completely. Later that evening, when the sun dipped low and painted the sky in gold, the mansion was quieter than ever, but it no longer felt empty. Adrian sat by the window as he always did, but this time he wasn't crying. Lily sat beside him, drawing on scraps of paper while he watched, occasionally pointing, occasionally laughing silently. From the hallway, Victor watched them both, a gentle smile softening his once hardened face. For the first time, silence wasn't something to fear. It was the space where love had finally learned how to speak. Outside, the garden glowed in twilight. The pond rippled with the last breath of wind, and though no sound touched the air, the world around Adrian seemed to hum quietly, not with noise but with life, and he could feel every heartbeat of it.